Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaurav. I know we have had some very interesting presentation sessions since morning, since yesterday. So what I'll do is I'll let the law of averages catch up with all of you and make it a bit boring. And I will make it a bit boring by talking about research and talking about theory, right? Uh, and I also know that we are running late, so I'll try to finish in about 10 minutes. So that we have time for the tea break at least before we catch up with the awards. So I have two parts to this presentation. I'm actually reporting. We had a series of workshops in June and July where a few of us who are engaged in the work of tactile interactivity for persons with visual impairments came together and we discussed on what the state, or more than state of the art, we tried to take stock of what is going on and what is it that we need to do in terms of how tactiles can make our processes and systems better. And then the findings from that workshop, I'll try to see and take them into a theoretical kind of discussion and try to project them towards understanding accessibility and assistive technologies from theoretical lenses. And I'll try to do that because while we are talking of interesting experiences, we're talking of innovation, we are talking of products, I am a researcher and my advocacy is for good research as a bedrock of innovation and good theory as a bedrock of good research. So unless we have that circuit completed, innovation and innovation serving the purpose is not what we believe may happen very easily. So this is a workshop we had. We had a 3-part workshop series, and some of us who are interested in this area, researchers and innovators of tactile media, we had come together on a common online platform, and we wanted to share and discuss approaches, opinions, challenges, anecdotes, and pressing questions for future research on this topic. Yeah? And this was facilitated through 3 2-hour sessions. And we had this done in the summer during June and July 2022. And we had participants from the GDI Hub. Professor Catherine was there. IIT Delhi, Professor Bala had participated. We had my colleagues at IIIT Bangalore, Microsoft Research, Raised Lines Foundation, PhD students from UCL, and my colleagues from WEMBI and Vision Impairments. So it was a group of researchers, group of startup founders, group of PhD students, and a few people who had experience of working with tactile and working and or being present in the field of tactile the tactile sector within the accessible education for visual impairment space. Now, the key discussion themes, and there are 3 that I want to summarize very quickly. One was we found, and we saw a lot in the earlier presentations. Namita brought up some very interesting tactile books and approaches. Professor Bob was talking about something very interesting. So when we looked at through our collective 15, 20 of us who have been working in this space and have been trying to look at the space, introducing tactile interactivity as early as possible has generally been found to be useful. So the young children that you were seeing in the videos earlier, providing tactiles to them becomes very important because skills to read and comprehend tactile information, if it is provided early, can serve them well as they progress in their education and later in their careers. And while we were looking at that, we also found that some of the tactiles that have worked well And tactiles that have worked well in educational spaces, in homes, they're not very complicated, elaborate technologies. So we're not looking at technologies that can come out only from IIT Madras. Yeah? So we're looking at technologies that can actually come out from a lot more spaces outside elite institutions like the IITs in India, right? So they need not involve complicated, elaborate technologies, because the goal here is to deliver an educational concept in a very accessible manner. So some of the books that Namita was showing, I don't think they need the kind of sophisticated technologies which requires a particular kind of training. The passive tactile cues in serious games, yeah, so we can introduce gaming, we can look at serious games, and they have also been found to help young students with visual impairments engage in friendly and collaborative learning interactions. We also saw that low cost and affordable tactile artifacts combined with an engaging social interaction, the teacher there was actually engaged. So while the book was there was also a social interaction that was going on, and that has been very useful in terms of some of the tactile experiences that we have found have worked. The second one was that incorporating a deep understanding of user context, and this was touched upon earlier. Professor Gaurav also touched upon in his presentation. So this remains critical. Yeah? The needs, the capacities, the dependencies, incorporating that deep understanding remains critical, and the ones that have worked and the ones that have not worked do kind of conform to a finding like this. So when we look at availability of affordable tactile diagrams for Indian students, it was found to be important in ensuring they do not miss out on concepts. There was a need for providing non-educational content. So stories is something that everyone is looking for. So when we go to children, when we go to schools, the first things that they want is stories. Yes? Because there are no stories that they have currently in terms of their let's say fun time experiences. So, and these stories, through whatever they provide, they add to the learning experiences, the comprehension experiences of students. And addressing the needs of students to create their own tactile content. So this is also something that we've seen has worked well wherever it has been adopted. And there is a demand for this, that we don't only want to consume the content that you provide, we want to create. So the sun diagram that was presented is something that is very useful. So it's not only the sun that we have to give to them, which is printed somewhere else, but we have to allow them to create their own content, because that is what helps them in their entire process. So tactile creation abilities at a decentralized student level, school level, is something that has become very important. And then the ongoing research efforts to extend the frontiers of tactile technologies are required. And there is a lot of research that is going on to see how we can, we saw, I think in the exhibition space, there's a lot of artifacts that are being presented, but ability to create erasable tactile drawings, as well as rapid tactile printing, rendering of three-dimensional tactile shapes, all of that. So these were the key themes of our discussions. And what I'll do is, and what also came about was that these are the 4 points that were discussed in terms of what we could improve in the overall tactile space. Yeah, so we should not look at tactile interface as a singular independent artifact. It has to be treated as part of an ecosystem. There was a talk of environment, yeah? There was talk of dependency. So ecosystem and looking at the artifact as part of a larger ecosystem, as part of a larger socio-technical ecosystem, becomes very important. The charity and donation-driven model of funding AT, again, this is something that has been talked about, can contribute to complacence and deep-rooted inertia for change and investment in research. So this is something that we need to be aware of. Adoption requires relinquishing old policies and methods and mindsets. So this is, again, not only for the tactile, say, artifacts, But in general, any technology adoption may need doing away with whatever we are very comfortable with, and that has to be factored in. Demonstration of impact requires invoking innovative indicators, and Professor Bala was talking about that, and that has to happen through broad consensus building and advocacy efforts. So this is what I report on behalf of all our collaborators in the workshop. The intention is we'll take it forward, and I am not taking names. There are 15, 20 of us there, and this is a kind of snapshot of whatever we discussed there. Now I move to now I take over a researcher role and leave that reporter role and get into some theories. Yeah, this wicked problem, I think Amit from Digital Impact Square was talking about. I'll talk about accessibility as a wicked problem, and I'll talk about assistive technologies as complex systems. Now, wicked problems are a class of problems that have been discussed quite a lot, in the social and policy planning literature. And it started coming by in the 70s and 80s. And I quote from a paper by Rittel and Weber. These are, so as opposed to problem in natural sciences that are definable, that are separable, and may have solutions that are findable, right? Those involving social or policy planning are ill-defined and rely upon political judgment for resolution. So we're talking about a class of problems that are not easily definable, right? So what the problem is a problem in itself, right? So we are not looking at a problem that has been given, that is clear-cut. We are looking at a problem that is elusive, yeah? Elusive in the sense we cannot define it very clearly. Depending on who we are, depending on the lens that we adopt, our understanding of that problem, our formulation of that problem will change. If you're a child, I'll probably understand that as a different, or I'll formulate it as a different problem. If I'm the policy maker in Delhi, I'll probably formulate it as a different problem, right? So in that sense, it is elusive to find consensus on that problem. And that is important to understand and acknowledge that not all problems can be reduced to problems that are there in the natural sciences, and they can be clear-cut and definable, right? For wicked problems, and wicked problems are not evil, right? So wicked is not in the sense of being evil, as opposed to tame or benign problems. Both the mission and whether the problem has been solved is not clear. Yeah, so this class of problems, it's not only the definition, but also when have we achieved the solution is something that's not clear, right? And when we look at an area called accessibility, right, there are multiple perspectives that come in, right? We don't know what is the right perspective. If you start looking at efficiency, you may have a compromise on dignity. If you start looking at dignity, you may have a compromise on effectiveness, right? So, and this will come by because you are looking at it from different perspectives. We are wearing different hats. So, trying to force fit a problem into a context which is wicked is something that's difficult, right? It's difficult and is not advisable. So, if you are trying to take a solution approach that is meant for a different class of problems and force fit into a class of problems that are wicked, we are not doing what we should be doing, right? So wicked problems and looking at accessibility as a wicked problem becomes important. The second thing that I wanted to look at is complex systems. Complex systems, and I quote from an old paper by Herbert Simon. These are systems that have a large number of parts, and these parts interact in non-simple ways. Yeah? So the interaction between these parts is not predictable, not certain. The whole is greater than the parts. Given the properties of the parts and the laws of their interaction, it is not a trivial matter to infer the properties of the whole. Right? So this is another concept that I wanted to introduce. And when I say the whole is greater than the parts, we are trying to look at examples like, let's say, those in chemistry, NaCl. Okay? So Na is sodium, Cl is chlorine. They have independent properties, but when they combine, yeah, the salt has a particular kind of taste, right? When the different notes in a musical piece combine, they don't have retain the same character of the individual notes, but they have melody, they have rhythm and all that. So the whole is greater than the parts, and the properties of the whole cannot be understood by reducing the whole into elementary parts, right? That is a Newtonian science approach, right? What we are trying to look here is a complexity science approach, which is better suited for problems that are called or that fall within the wicked problem context. So wicked problems are managed, debated, and constantly renegotiated rather than solved, right? So we are not solving wicked problems. Our fascination with problem solving has to go if we have to tackle wicked problems. Yeah, we are very fascinated by a problem solving approach. Now that is difficult for wicked problems. We are not solving these problems. What we are doing is we are managing these problems, we are debating about these problems, and we are negotiating, we are renegotiating about these problems. Yeah? And the fundamental challenge here is to develop new thinking about the multiple causes of problems, opening up new insights about the multiple pathways and levels required for better solutions, gaining broad stakeholder acceptance of shared strategies and process. So that is what we are trying to do. Yeah, we are not solving wicked problems. We are not trying to simplify the complexity that wicked problems are entrenched in. Yeah, we are trying to negotiate, we are trying to manage, and we are trying to build a broad stakeholder acceptance of how to go about doing it. And that's where we have to, and that's where systems thinking is something that we have to factor in, right? Because system thinking talks about holism, systems thinking and systems approaches talk about pluralism. Holism is where we gain understanding by looking at relationships. Pluralism is where we don't fall into the trap of dogmatism that this is the only way it can happen. It incorporates multiple perspectives and is willing to live with those multiple kind of perspectives while negotiating problem and problematic contexts. And therefore, what I conclude with is when problems are wicked and accessibility is a wicked problem, and when technologies are part of complex systems and assistive technologies are part of complex systems, they cannot stand on their own. They're part of social, political, cultural processes. Approaches which derive from systems thinking and systems approaches are better ways or are better possible ways to go ahead. And that is where a lot of what has already been talked about, participatory design, how do we get more and more people from different aspects of the stakeholder ecosystem, users, people from the disabled people's organization, caregivers, policymakers, technologists, how can we get all of them to come together and have conversations and have those conversations early on? How can we have our design approaches that are human-centered? And how can we have incremental and iterative? And agile has become very popular nowadays in the digital world. I'm sure it's being considered elsewhere also, but agile is something that incorporates incremental and iterative approaches because we don't know what the problem is. We learn about the problem as we work on the solution. So the causation is not problem leading to solution, but it's a mutual causation. We know more about different facets of the problem as we get to know about different ways in which we can address that particular problem. So that is what I wanted to, I think I still took a lot of your time, but I'll conclude. We need to look at accessibility as a wicked problem. We need to look at assistive technology as complex systems. And we need to fall back on some of these theoretical, and these theories have actually existed for a long time. We're probably not doing that in assistive technologies. And I think that's where some of the, there have been a lot of successes. Many of you are sitting here doing wonderful work, but where we are not able to do work, maybe these kinds of approaches, falling back on theory, falling back on good research practices may help the innovation space, may help the AT space go forward. Thank you very much.